Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. My name's Cal. Welcome to my channel. And if you're here from Epic Page Builder Widgets, welcome. This might be your first time seeing my channel. If you're here from my channel, welcome back to my channel. I'm Cal. I'm a developer, a store owner, just like you probably. And I have an agency called Epic Design Labs. And what I want to talk about today is I want to show you guys how to build a custom widget on BigCommerce. I get this question a ton. I noticed that there's almost no YouTube videos on how to do this. And I want to show you guys not only how to do it, but also how to do it a heck of a lot easier. I want to show you guys the easiest method to do it. Give me a one or your favorite emoji if you guys can hear me right now. Just let me know for sure that I'm on and that my voice is actually coming through the interwebs, unlike Twitter presidential race announcements. All right, there we go. I can actually hear myself. All right. Thanks for the feedback, you guys. I appreciate it. Now, this is going to be a workshop. I'm going to do this live, so I apologize in advance for all my fat fingering of any kind of spelling. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. And let me turn off my sound so that doesn't throw me off. All right. Okay, let me share my screen. Now I've done a little bit of, I'm going to share it bigger than that. I've done a little bit of prep for this because this is going to be a codey example. Now, if you're not a coder, hang on with me. It's not going to be super, super long because I'm going to show you guys literally how to do this 5 or 10 times easier than the other methods. But I am going to show you, this is a codey thing, right? And while you may have this app that makes it easier, if you don't know code, you're probably going to need somebody to know code. You can share with them this workshop though, and this is going to help them see how to do it. Before we get started, I guess, there are a couple different ways to do this. And if you're looking in the BigCommerce documentation, you're probably going to, be under the impression that this is all done with custom API calls using a program like Postman, and you're just pushing the API calls with the data into your store. And it's really onerous to do that because you got to get API keys, you got to test out the connection, you got to get all of your headers right, like all that stuff. You got to put versioning into it. And if you forget versioning, that can be problematic because you're going to want to update it when you realize you missed something down the road. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And if you're doing this the manual way, hey Al, if you're doing this the manual way, it's going to be rough. And there's a reason why not many people are building custom widgets this way. There is a second way to do it, which is to use a repo here, which you can see. Make sure all the way. There's this repo put out by BigCommerce, a GitHub repo with a widget builder. And if you go into here, into the README, it'll tell you about, downloading it, expanding it, some CLI type stuff. But you still have a lot of stuff to do just in prep to get in and out. And it's still pretty not super forgiving, let's say. And so this is better than doing it just raw with Postman. But, I'm not super excited about using this method. BigCommerce, it's not about you. I've just found a better way. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that now. So we're just going to skip to the easy method because we don't have all day. And if I was going to show you the hard method, then this would be a 5-hour stream. So we're going to make this hopefully a less than 1 hour stream. And I'm going to show you guys how to build a widget from start to finish. Okay. So sharing my screen. What I have done is I have my trusty sandbox set up and I have put a little bit of code on the homepage. Now, this is where I always start when making a custom widget. Let me just look at my notes and make sure I didn't go over miss anything. Let's see. We went over API, GitHub, page builder widgets. Okay. Yes. Let me start out by showing you guys just kind of where I'm starting at right now, and then we'll go from there. So I always start out by putting a little bit of code onto my page. So this is my div structure of this very simple widget that I'm going to build out. And it's just got a div. It's got an image in it with a placeholder image. I always use this via.placeholder.com for my placeholder images. And then I have a div in here for my content, and I put 2 spans in it. That's it. Really simple. I'm not going to show you guys how to build the most complicated widget today in the span of an hour, because I would run out of time then. But I'm going to show you guys how to build a simple one from start to finish. So I start out by putting my div structure on the page, just like that. And then I do some styling for it. You can see my styling here. Now, unlike your BigCommerce template files, which have Sass built in the widgets, it's basically just CSS. So don't do any nesting or anything fancy like that. This is what my CSS looks like. So I have a class here that targets the outside. I got display flex, align center, flex direction column. And that's because I do recommend you guys code things mobile first, right? So make it look good on mobile. So in this case, I'm vertically stacking it. And then on desktop, I'm changing it to a row using my Flexbox. So that's why it's stacked on mobile. And then when I expand it, it goes side by side. I have just a little bit of styling on my content block. My spans, I just put them in display block, and I made the title fonts, which is my span that I gave a title class to, just made it a little bit bigger. So nothing to write home about. You guys, I'm not teaching you guys how to code today. Hopefully you guys know how to code whatever you need to code, or you have somebody that can code it. But the idea is just to kind of put together what you want to express before you turn it into a widget, instead of trying to build it as you go as a widget, because this is just going to be so much faster. So you want the structure like this ahead of time so that you can just copy and paste it. So this is basically the widget that we're going to build today. There are 2 types of widgets. There are tab widgets and array widgets. So an array is something like a photo gallery where you need to add a bunch of photos, and the number of photos that you add could be variable. Whereas a tab style widget does not have any kind of like list items of content, if that makes sense. So maybe it'll have like a picture and a text and something else, but it won't have like the ability to load 1 to 10 pictures, for example. It's going to be more specific when you're building a tab style. So what we're going to build today is tab style. I'll probably maybe have a separate workshop sometime where I go over an array style, but you should be able to really do either one from what I'm going to show you guys today. All right, so showing you guys kind of where I'm starting from. Next, I want to show you guys the tool. Yes, the tool. The tool is a widget put out by my team called Epic Page Builder Widgets. If you guys, well, most of you guys, I think on this call have probably heard it, probably already have it, right? Because you either follow my channel or you're here because you are already using the widgets and you got, an email. When you go into Epic Page Builder Widgets, there is a new tab here called Create Widget. And this is something that we put together. We released it without talking about it earlier this year. And I'm here to spread the good news, you guys. Now, a little bit about Page Builder Widgets. When you get this, it has a whole bunch of extra pre-built widgets that you can add to your store. That costs nothing. However, if you want to get even more widgets, our premium widgets, that costs $50 one time. I shouldn't say that in the video, because what if we raise prices, you guys? But we're not going to raise prices. So for $50 one time, you get all these extra widgets, right? Which is pretty cool. There's like, I don't know, 25 or so at the moment released, maybe 30. But it also gives you access to the Create Widget tool. So if you have Page Builder Widgets and you click on Create Widget and you don't see what you're seeing here, it's because you need to upgrade for the $50, and it's one time. All right. So in the Create Widget tab, first of all, you can do this for whatever storefronts are attached to this BigCommerce account. So you choose the storefront here, and then you select a starter. Technically, you can start from scratch if you want, but don't, because we've made it so much easier for you. So first of all, there's some existing widgets where you can see examples of widgets in place. So this is really useful so that you can see some different types of inputs and how they translate from the schema to the template. There's a text block one, a spacer. The text block is a array style widget. The spacer is a tab style widget. Divider is a tab style widget. And image is really nice because it shows you how to use the image puller, which is really nice. But the two places I want you guys to start at are these starters right here called General Tab and General Array. So these are just plain Jane preset widgets that you can use as a starting point to build either one of these types of widgets. So the General Tab, we're going to start there today because we're building a tab widget. You can, when you scroll down here, you see the styling up at the top, you see the HTML, and then you see the schema. So the schema is what creates the user interface choices in the customizer. Let's go to the customizer and I'll show you guys. I'm going to just open this up in a new tab. I'll try not to go tab crazy because I don't want to give you guys whiplash, but we can see this. If we click into our current theme and click customize, you can see I pushed in the general tab and general array already. And so I can click in here and drag this in, and this puts the widget into the page that I've pushed in. Now let me go back a step. I have a bunch of widgets already created in this store because this is my sandbox, and you can see I do a lot of widgets, right? You can use this edit existing button to choose one of your existing widgets, like one of the tab widgets that I pushed in, and edit it, right? So you want to go back and you make some changes, then this is how you can basically access that. Now, if you weren't using the widget, you'd need to use Postman or the GitHub repo, and then bring that widget out to be able to edit it. But here we can just click edit existing, pick the one that we want to edit, and the code's right there. Now, I'm going to rename this one here so that we know which one we're working on today. We're going to call this tab 0526. That's today's date if you're watching this live. All right, I'm going to click down here and update it. And if we go back to the page builder and click refresh, I'm going to scroll down here and you see the widget right here. I've just taught you guys how to update a custom widget and saved you a ton of time, because if you've tried to do this with Postman, that just saved you an hour or two pretty much, depending on how much fiddling you got to do, right? Okay, so you guys can see this is the widget that we're editing. I'm going to just drag it into the page just so that we can see it. And I'm going to go ahead and click publish, right? Just to make it permanent. Okay, so let's look at this widget. I'll click into it, and you can see that it's called tab 0526. It's got a section here called content with an input. It's called sample text. And then it's got settings where it already has some settings built out. And this is where we've put some extra work into these two starters, the general tab and the general array. We've already added some things that we think every widget just needs, like, is there a max width? Is there a background color? What's the margin around it? What's the padding around it? Does it have a border, right? So just right here, within 2 minutes of opening Epic Page Builder widgets, again, all you got to do is say, I want to start with the general tab, call it something, and then push it in by pushing the update button at the bottom, you've created a widget, you've named a widget, and you have the bare bones skeleton of the widget, right? Hi, Polar. Thanks for joining us, by the way. All right, so let's talk about the user interface, right? This is all driven from the schema, and the schema is very specific. You have a little bit of stuff at the top. This is where we declare it to be a tab or an array. Hopefully I didn't cough on you guys just now. I hit the mute button. If I coughed on you guys, let me know. Do I think I could build a year make model with Epic? Jason, possibly. You would have to be able to access the data that you want the widget to make using GraphQL, though. Sometimes stuff like that is a little bit easier just to build out without a widget. The idea of a widget is to make a modular component that you could reuse in a ton of places. Whereas a year make model, you can call it a widget, but it doesn't have to be an actual widget. It just needs to be a component on the page. But good question. All right, so getting back to the schema, we got tab. This is where we declare it to be type tab or array. We have the label of it. I forget where that outputs. I think it's at the top of the widget itself. And then we have sections, right? So each item here in the JSON is a different section. So here's where the content section comes from, which is here. And then the next section right over here is settings. So that's where this comes from. So depending on whether or not you want to nest more choices in content or settings or create more sections, that's how you do it, is by having your first rung of the JSON be the sections, right? Okay, so within this section, you have settings, and settings are the individual UI choices that are present in that section. Now, in this case, in the content section, there's only one UI choice input, which is this. And so that's what we see here, is that there is one input type, well, one input of type input. It's called sample text, so that's the label. Here's the ID, so this is how we're going to reference it in the HTML. And then I chose to put a default in here. You don't have to put a default. And the default does work a little bit different in some of the UI items. Now, this is how you basically put one choice in here. You can see in the next section in the settings, we just have all these preset choices. So we have a Boolean here that lets you decide if you want to enable max width. And we've done something cool here. So this is a really good example where if you choose to enable max width, if you look at this next section, which is a number section, this is where you actually input how big you want your max width to be, right? So this is a number input called max width in PX with an ID of max width. And then it's conditional. So it's got this conditional flag that says that it's conditional on this element, which is this up here. So it's conditional on it being true. So this is one of the cool things that is hard to get out of BigCommerce's documentation, honestly. But when we come down here, if I flag this and say enable max width, you see it pop up an extra choice there. That's the conditional function saying this input is conditional on this one being true. So if I remove it, that one's gone again. Pretty cool. All right. There's more choices down here. I don't think I need to go through all of them, but I just kind of wanted to have you guys understand, like, this is where the choices come from. Now, the choices that are available is set in stone. That's up to BigCommerce to define. We've built a cheat sheet out for you guys. So if you just scroll down on this page, you can see the cheat sheet where we've taken a screenshot of basically how each of these inputs gets put on the page. So this would be the alignment input. And you can technically, this is if you have alignment horizontal and vertical turned on, you could change this to be just horizontal, and then it'll just show these three without showing the vertical. This is the Boolean, and so on and so on. So you can see, like, really quickly and easily which one you're actually looking for. And then we've included little hotkeys here. If you click on this, hopefully. BigCommerce changes their links all the time. It breaks my links when you guys change your documentation, if you're watching. But we've linked to BigCommerce's documentation for each of these UI types to make it just super easy for you guys to say, okay, this is the one I'm looking for. Let's see the documentation on that. Let's just go right to it. So you can see what the schema can be and should be in that. Now, their documentation could be a little bit better, in my opinion. So we may at some point, recreate these documentation pages on our site and link to ours instead. But for now, they're linking to BigCommerce's actual documentation. And we've also included a copy to clipboard link for each one of these. So, if you want to get the actual code, you can just copy it to clipboard, and you can see the schema for that is basically already in your clipboard to save you some time, which is really, really cool. We want to just make it really easy for people to make widgets, or, to hire us to make widgets, or to buy our widgets, All right. So this cheat sheet is here to help you guys. If you guys have suggestions for us to improve on it, let me know, because we want to really make this the easiest way to possibly make widgets. And we really want to encourage people to make widgets for their stores and make widgets for their clients. So if you're a competitor watching this, we would love nothing more than for you to buy our app for all of your clients and use this to make amazing widgets and make your code modular and componentalized. Is that a word? Make it modular so it's less customization in the theme. When you guys build custom widgets, you can have a designed element without it, creating more customizations in your theme. And when you have a bunch of widgets in your store, if you guys upgrade to a different theme, you can bring all those widgets and all that content forward just by making sure you have the same page builder regions in there. Let's see. Question from Ricardo. Are you able to create a custom widget out of a pre-built widget in order to customize it with more options? So our sync function, when you first get this installed, you can sync custom widgets, and this will bring any of your custom widgets into here that you can immediately start editing. It doesn't bring the default widgets that BigCommerce put in there, though. But our app really contains, what we want to be. They contain better versions, is what we're hoping, of the widgets that we think needed to be improved on. So the answer to your question, can we just start editing on the pre-built ones from BigCommerce? Technically no, but use our widgets and you might already have all the stuff that you need right there. Okay. Am I going too fast? Do you guys have any questions on what I've shown you guys so far? So we've talked about array widgets. We've talked about tab widgets. We've created a widget. I've shown you guys how to access and edit a custom widget, whether it's one that you built with our tool or one that you had, some dude last year build. Any of your custom widgets you can edit. And we've had to do this a lot. There's a lot of people, hiring people to build their stores with widgets, which is great. I love it. And then they forget things like putting all of the alt text fields in there. And then all of your images on all of your widgets don't have alt text. And then they're getting flagged with the ADA scanners and all that stuff. So it's really good to be able to edit them. All right. I want to make sure that I get through this. So we have gone through the schema. The schema, again, is where all the user interface bits are. And what you're going to do is just add more stuff to this. Now it is JSON, so it's very sensitive and you got to not break the JSON. So just understand that. If you click update down here and it doesn't say updated, widget updated successfully, it's probably because you forgot a bracket or you pasted something in the wrong place. So there is going to be a learning curve for you guys as developers to get used to, this JSON structure. But the good thing is you have starters, and you have starters that really are going to get you the most of the way there on, I think, most custom apps, right? Okay, let's actually build this thing. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my VS Code and take my my actual code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to paste it right in there. This is basically pasting, the hard code right into there. And that's it. I'm going to do the exact same thing with my style. And I know that I already have a style sheet there, so I'm going to just put this at the end of it. All right. So we have the original style here from the starter widget. And to go through this just a little bit, this is only basically a little bit of styling here for the only div that you start with, right? So this is the div that you start with. You can see we have like a placeholder here where you might want to put in a widget ID, a placeholder where you might want to put in a widget name. You can just delete those out if you don't want to use that type of stuff. And then we've added this class called block underline bracket bracket underline dot ID. So this is a tool that BigCommerce gives us, a stencil tool for widgets that will output a like an ID for this individual instance of the widget. So this is going to be unique to this widget where I put it. And so this gives us a way to have styling that only applies to this widget and not to every widget of this type. Did I say that right? I hope so. So when we come up here to the styling that we have in here by default, right? This is what you're going to get with the starter. You're going to see dot block underline ID. So this is targeting this class to make sure that the CSS that I put in these brackets only affects this one instance of this one widget. And you can go through this code a little bit to kind of figure out what all this is. You know, it matches up to the schema that's down below. So like this margin element goes, calls the container margin key and looks for the top attribute and then the value of that. And then you have to add pixels so that your CSS knows what to make of that number. So when we come down here to this input, here's where container margin is. And so you can see container margin dot top dot value is going to bring out 0 by default. But then as you put values in, it's going to start increasing that margin. And so that's how we apply the margin to this, this block. And same with padding, same with background. You can see where I used a Boolean here to say if max width true is set. So if this has a value of true, because we said we want to enable max width, this is where the max width CSS is going to be put on page. But because it's surrounded by this stencil if statement, it's only going to show and it's only going to affect the widget if that condition is true, right? So you can use Booleans and things to toggle on and off your CSS as you do this. So same down here with if border visibility is true. So basically if border is not set to show, none of this CSS is ever going to be on the page at all. So, you know, this is some good examples, but again, this is the stuff that we think should be added to every widget anyway. So we're trying to help you guys establish a good baseline of, let's just make sure all of our widgets have borders and margins and backgrounds and padding and make it take 0 minutes for you guys to do it. So this is the default code. I would just leave it in and learn from it. And we want to also apply our custom code. Now, as I mentioned, you know, you want the styling that you're putting on here to only affect this one widget, because if I leave my styling like this, then this is going to affect every widget that matches that class, right? So here's what we want to do. First of all, we want to take that HTML code that we wrote and we want to actually move it into that starter div, right? So now everything that we've custom coded for the HTML is now under that block .id. So what we can do now is take this and go to each line that we did. And now these are specific just to this instance now. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and just save this. As I mentioned, the JSON that you're dealing with is finicky. So I recommend updating frequently so that if if something goes wrong, you're going to catch it faster and not have to go back so many steps. Let's go back to our page builder and we're going to click refresh. Look at that, you guys. There is our widget. Now, I mean, it's kind of our widget. It's what we intend to see, but it's all hard coded still, right? And it's still got this sample text input that was there prior, and we don't really need the sample text input. What we need is we need a way to input this image. We need a way to input this title and this body text, right? So let's go do that. Let's go back to the widget. And what we're going to do first is we're going to delete this sample text. So this removed it from the HTML. And we're going to go back in here where the label is. Now, this type of field, the input field, is completely cool like this. It's completely cool for me to use to put in my title, let's say. So let's just change this to be called title. And let's change the ID to be called title. Here's what we do is we go back to our code and we go to where the title is, which is right here. And we're going to put curly bracket, title, curly bracket. And I'm just going to put a dash. And I'm going to leave the original code in there just to make sure we know where this should be. So if this is connected right, we should see whatever's in this field dash, this is the title. Okay, so let's do that. Update the widget. Refresh it in the customizer. And so let's put something in here, something. And so what we see says something dash, this is the title. So we've confirmed that we've connected this input to where it needs to go on the page, but we need to get rid of the original placeholder stuff that I had left in there hard-coded. Okay, let's do the same thing with the body. So we're going to go back to here, and I'm going to just take out that default because I don't really care if it's there. And I could use another input field for my body, but I'm going to use something a little bit more robust and use this text field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to where the input is. I'm going to type a comma. I'm going to go to the next line and make sure I don't mess up my spacing. And let's see, this didn't paste right. We've just implemented this feature, so I may need to adjust our copy to clipboard function. But here, I'm going to show you guys how to do it. Gosh, got extra spacing all over the place. So we're going to put in a type of text, which should look like this. It's type text, and you can click here to view BigCommerce's documentation again. So it needs a type. It needs a label. I guess you don't really have to have a label, but I recommend a label so you know what you're looking at. It needs an ID, and it can have a string. So it's basically the same as the normal input, except that it's type text. Okay, so it looks the same. It's got type, label. Oh, we missed the ID. We're going to call this, body text. Now you're going to want, for your IDs, you're going to want to use camel casing, basically. So lowercase initial, the initial letter, capitalize anything else that's really a separate word. And this needs to be the default. All right, this is some text. Okay, let's click save. Oh, you can see it didn't save, so I didn't get that message. So something is messed up. Here it is. This shows you how finicky it is. This is JSON, and it's got to be JSON. Like, it's unforgiving. I missed a comma here, so every line needs to have a comma except for the last one of a section. Widget updated successfully. So come back in here. Refresh it. If I clip into it, here is my body text. Now you can see that when I put in the title before, it didn't save it. Here's the body text for real y'alls. The reason I didn't save this before is I didn't click publish. So when I click publish, that commits the changes I made to the text. And you'll see now that as I change more things in this widget, it doesn't like delete the text that's in there. You're completely safe to add things. Now, if you subtract something, if you subtract a field, I'm pretty sure that it's going to delete any content that was there, even if you bring that field back. But you're completely safe adding more fields or like changing labels of fields and stuff like that. So we have, this is the title. You can see it twice. I'm going to fix that here. And we have, here's the body text for reals, y'all, but it's not outputting. And that's because when we created the input, we didn't actually do anything to output it. So let's take the ID of that text field, the body text, and we're going to go to where we want it to output, which is the body section right here. Boom. And let's go ahead and take out the extra hard coding here from the title. Click update. Page builder, refresh. All right, we're cooking. This is the title. Here's the body text for reals, y'all. And we have the extra hard-coded bit that I'll remove in a second. So now we need the image. Now, again, a good place of reference to see how images work is looking at the image list widget over here. And a couple things to note. Here's what should be there basically. It should be type image manager, ID, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to leave it what it is here. And you can have a default if you want. If you don't put a default in, then there's not going to be an image when you load it. I would suggest that you might also consider putting in the label, like what your ideal size is. So let's go back to edit that existing widget. I'm going to click back into the tab 0526, and I'm going to add what I pasted out of that other one. And again, you can get these from the cheat sheet down below too. This one, where I pasted it from, was missing a label here, so I'm going to add a label. The items here that you're seeing on each line, these are set by BigCommerce, so we can't just willy-nilly put whatever we want in this JSON or it's going to choke. So you have to have a type, you have to have an ID, you probably want a label, and yeah. So let's say this is going to be the image manager type, which lets you upload an image. It's going to be called image URL, and we're going to have a label that says image. And I'm going to put 600 by 600, just because I think that that's kind of good practice to tell people, that are using your widget, what's the size that you should be loading. This is just going to save you so much time. This is not required and has nothing to do with like how to build a widget. It has everything to do with how to just like make things easier on yourself. Okay. I'm going to leave this, whatever this placeholder image was in here. Note that it needs to be something that's like hosted on a specific, URL. Can't be something that's like dynamic based on your current page. I think it can be something that you have hosted on your web dev. Using images like this via placeholder doesn't work really well for defaults. So just be aware of that. This is like not a real image. So if you try and use that as your default, it doesn't work. You gotta use a real image as your default. Okay, but we're putting image manager, image URL in here. Let's click save. It didn't like something. And look at that. I made the same exact noob mistake. I forgot my comma when I put in an extra line. Story of my life. I'm going to go back to the customizer, click refresh. We're 42 minutes into the call, and we have a widget. We have the ability to put in our title, our body text, and an image. Now you can see there is an image in here and it's not outputting. And that's because, again, we didn't connect it to the front end. So what we need to do is come back into the back end again and take this ID from the image manager input that we did. And we need to replace this right here where we had the placeholder with, I think it's like image url.src for source. Let's see. It's saved. That's a good sign. Okay, it didn't like it. Let's go back. I forget the exact structure here. Let's go back, click on the image list. So this is where we can totally see, like as a cheat sheet, like how it even outputs in this other widget, right? So let's go back to our widget, tab 0526, and what did we do wrong here? Image URL dot source. Let's see. Looks exactly the same. Let's make sure it's not just a problem with the placeholder. So I'm going to just choose a different. Oh, I got Spider-Man. Cool. Oh, chicken wings. No, let's make it be this owl. Okay. So you can see that when I choose like a fresh image, there was just something wrong with the default placeholder. But if I choose a fresh image, choose Spider-Man. Now I'm going to choose the owl. If I choose a fresh image, then it is displaying on page. Now, this is like an enormous image, so clearly I need a little bit more CSS here in what I did here. So let's go back to the back end and let's put in I think I'm going to add a class to my image. Call it dash image. This is really nothing to do with the widget and just everything to do with I didn't prep my example enough. So I'm going to target that image now. I'm going to make sure that I put my block ID at the front. I'm going to say max width. Okay, refresh. I don't think I saved after I put that L in there. Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, look, we got a widget. We're widgeting you guys. Okay. Now, when you do a widget, make sure to always check mobile and desktop and all that stuff. Be sure to put your responsive stuff in here. You can use flags like let's put in an extra Boolean here. I'm going to show you guys something quick. We're going to put a Boolean in here and say image on right with, we give it an ID of image right, default of false. So this is going to be basically a checkbox that's called image on right question, and it's going to be set to false automatically. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just put a paragraph tag on the page and show you guys what actually outputs for the Boolean, for example. So this is just going to be right above our whole widget. It'll output what happens when you have image right. Go back to our customizer. You're gonna learn a lot about flipping between tabs when you build widgets, for sure. Okay, so now you can see the extra flag here that says image on right. And if I select it, then, well, there you go. You can see where the p tag output and it says true. If I unselect it, then it says false, right? So here's what you can do is you can look at what we did on this right here. If max width equals true, we're going to come down here to where we have our flex and say right here where we have flex direction row, we're going to put an if statement in here. It says if not max width is true, if image right is true. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to override this flex direction row with, what is it, row reverse. Okay. I don't do enough coding these days to remember if it's row reverse or a little bit different. So let's just find out how sloppy I am together. Okay. If you guys have more questions, start queuing them up. I know this is not something you've probably seen before, how to code a widget in under an hour, and there's not a lot of good widget tutorials on here at all. So now's your chance, man. I'll put out more videos about this, but now's your chance. Tell me what you guys want to know real quick. I got about 5-10 minutes left for QA, but you can see right here we got a toggle that is changing our widgets alignment. So now this is basically what we've built out with the alternating banner widget, by the way, but you guys can build your own banner widget, alternating banner widget, just like us. And say you duplicated it and said this second one, we're going to make that image on right. Look what we've done. This is like what everybody asks us to do all the time, and we're so bored of doing alternating blocks. But you guys probably want to know how to do this, and using these flags to toggle CSS on and off, super easy, man. All right. I'm going to click publish. You can see too that I have that extra true hanging out there. So just to quiet my anxiety, I'm going to remove that trash. We basically have a widget now, man. We went start to finish, less than an hour, while I'm explaining and fat fingering things and forgetting my commas. Now, if you guys contact my business and say, like, I want a widget, I just want to pay for an hour. Well, come on, man. It takes a lot longer than that to figure out what you really want, But I want you guys to see that, if you plan it out, if you draw it out, if you pre-build it and you say, this is exactly how it should be, then converting it to a widget using this Epic Page Builder Widgets tool, it's not too hard. And BigCommerce, while there's some things I would like them to change, there's some inputs I'd like them to, add. I would love their documentation to be better. It's pretty extensible. There's a lot that you can do here. And I mean, this has been sitting here for 2 years for people to build widgets with, and it just hasn't been this easy until now. And I hope that you guys feel, having looked at it, that it's super easy and well worth $50 just to be able to do this. So questions here. I think I already answered Ricardo's about customizing widgets with more options. Yeah, if it's a custom widget, you can easily tack on. I mean, you guys have seen me basically edit and re-upload this widget over and over again. And whenever you click upload here, man, this is doing a lot of work for you guys that takes time when you don't use this widget. Like this is doing a whole API call from our app into your store, finding that widget, updating it, reversioning it, and telling you if it worked or not. So there's a lot that goes into it, but we've made it really easy. Obviously you have to know JSON. All right. If you want to keep each widget unique to a theme, can you keep the HTML and CSS in the theme? Yes, you can. So that kind of gets into, some considerations that I think are worth talking about. And that's totally one that I had on my list because, we build out, we built the page builder widgets. And when we first built this, we had no intention or even idea that you could build a widget creation utility in it, right? So we built this just to deploy these other pre-built widgets, right? And so we built out a bunch of pre-built widgets, and we took it to the next level with the widget creation. But the idea when we use pre-made widgets, like if we go into our brand new, announced today, it's been in your store for a little bit, but we didn't announce it until today, the Triple Hero widget. When we build this out, we have to think about what are all the conditions somebody might want. Somebody might want a border, they might not want a border. They might want to lazy load them, they might not want to lazy load them. They might want padding in between these, they might not. They might want max width, they might not. So if you're gonna like try and do what we've done and build out production widgets, you need a ton of options in it, right? Because you're trying to encounter every possible variation. And we get a lot of emails saying, hey, why doesn't it do this one thing? It seems so obvious. And it's like, dude, we added 120 inputs to that widget. So if you're building for production in many, many stores, then you have to have many, many options. In what I just showed you, I'm kind of showing you guys how to build one that's lean for an individual store. And so you have to ask yourself, what are the choices that my individual store owner needs within this widget? And this is why this is so much more stripped down than what we built here in the Triple Hero, is because when we build a custom store for people, we're building all of the homepage modules out as long as it makes sense with widgets. And we could build 100 more user inputs in here, but two things that makes it so that the store owner is going to start doing things that makes things not consistent from page to page. It also means there's so many more little things that they got to do every time they put this widget to page to get it to look like all the other instances. So we feel like if we're going to build something out that's custom for an individual store, we actually want less options, right? And we build less options in it. Now, to answer your question about the CSS, it's up to you if you think that the CSS should be included within the module widget, or if you want to just have some CSS that you throw into your your theme.css or your custom CSS file. The CSS that you put into your theme's CSS file will affect your widget. And so that brings up two things. Number one, like, do you want to just globally style these widgets, right? If so, great. But number two, should the styling exist within the widget, right? So if you want these to be truly modular and something that will survive a theme change, a theme update, then you actually want the CSS to be part of the module, like I showed you guys here. Now, I'm not saying that's the way. You really just kind of have to make a choice. Do we want to style it site-wide and have it not be in the module, or do we want it truly modular so we could redeploy this in any other theme, right? There's a case to be made for if you do it globally, there's just less lines of CSS. But the other thing to point out is, now that you guys are clear that theme styling can affect the widget, it means that you probably want to do some things like all these important tags that are normally considered super gross, and I can hear you puking in your mouth, but what happens when you don't put important tags in here is you got all that CSS baggage from your site now affecting the widget when you actually want the widget styling to override all that stuff. So this is a case where really overdoing it on the important tags actually makes sense, even though it feels wrong, right? Let's see here. Other questions. Hopefully I answered that for you, Patrick. How do I customize a widget you already built? I went over that earlier. Basically, the ones that BigCommerce put out, they don't pull directly into our widget customizer. However, I think the ones that we built and push into there using our app do pull. So when you first get into the create widget, you choose your storefront and then you sync custom widgets, and that'll bring all of your custom widgets that are on your store into here, where you can choose from them in this drop down to select the one that you want to edit. So yeah, you can see where all of our page builder widgets pulled into here. If you try it out and it's not the case, send me a support ticket, and that's what we're intending. Um, Hopefully that makes sense. Dab Lab. All right. Some other considerations I had written down. Just have a couple minutes left. Keep the questions coming if you guys have them. But you want to write regular CSS. So while your BigCommerce theme has Sass, your widgets do not have Sass. They're not compiled. So you need to write regular CSS, one line per line, no nesting. I wrote down, use more important tags than you may think. Don't go crazy on how many UI choices you add, and that you can, I just want to point out that you can nest your choices into sections to keep them clean. And you can see some of the widgets we put in our app early on. They're not very well organized, some of them, and we're coming back and organizing them into nice clean little buckets like this, like they should be. So just don't go, too super crazy. You can go as crazy as you want to go. But also, if you didn't see the part of this workshop where I went over the conditional choices, that's very cool and a very, very neat way to keep things clean. This is where you have something that you can expand and show. It's not actually expanding it. It's that this item is conditional on this being set to true. So when it's not set to true, that choice doesn't exist, which is cool. There's one other way that you can keep things clean, which is with this element type of UI choice. And we used one of each of these specifically because I did think it came out pretty good in the UI, but also I wanted to give you guys, three different examples of how to keep your widgets clean. Number one is the sections that you can expand and contract. Number one is the conditionals. Number two is the conditionals, if I can count. You don't have to count to make widgets. Number three is the element. So the element choices let you toggle on or off an element. So we're toggling on or off the border. And the element UI includes this little like edit button. I think it's supposed to be a paintbrush. And when you do that, it brings up like a flyout menu that you can nest multiple choices underneath it, which is really, really cool. All right. We are out of time. I want to squeeze one more thing in here to show you guys, though. I went deep dive mode on the tab style widget, but there's also this array style widget, and the array style widget is very different because it's got this array, and each item in the array has questions that pertain to that item in the array. You can look at the general array widget starter to see kind of how that works, right? And I'll probably do another workshop just to go over the array, just like I did on this one for the tab. But the array type can also have a tab, and just look at the array starter to see how this works. But if you add the tab, if you add the tab to it, it gives you a settings menu that comes up under this ellipses. So if you don't add the tab to the array, then there's no settings. But if you add the tab to the array, and you'll see it in the example, then that exposes a widget wide set of settings. So the context of the items that you, or the UI choices that you attach to each list item in here, these are contained within the context of that item. And so you can expose this as you're looping through that array. But you're going to want widget wide settings as well. And so this is how you do it. You add that tab, it gives you this settings screen where you now can have widget wide content like your max width. And you can see we put the exact same preset choices here because, like I said, we're trying to encourage consistency in the widget world. All right, you guys, I'm spent. I hope this was helpful to you guys. I know it's late on a Friday, and I don't know if I've been talking fast. I feel like I have. I know that there's a lot to this. So this is obviously recorded, so you can watch it and rewind it. I'm going to do a lot more trainings around this. I may even create like a mini course. But as you guys can see, you can make a widget in less than an hour using the widget, the Epic Page Builder widget app. It's $50 one time. Highly encourage it. We've got like a lot of enterprise stores using this $50 one-time app to build cool stuff. So I encourage you guys to use it. Post any questions you guys have below here. I'd love to know, what did I go too fast on? What should I provide an extra video on? Let me know what your questions are. And I appreciate everybody coming. I'm Cal from Epic Design Labs. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.